Hello class, welcome back. On today's lesson, we will be learning how to do basic SQL queries. That is your select, your insert, your update, and your delete. We will learn those 4 queries and maybe truncate and drop. Those are the basic queries that we'll have to learn in today's lesson. So if you have not been following other 2 lessons for creating a database and creating a table, please watch those one first before you can watch this one. Alright, let us start. So in our previous videos, we managed to create a database and we also managed to create 2 of our tables, which is the facilitator and the student info. So we want to start now to put information inside our table. And that will be inserting information inside our table, and this can be done in 2 ways. So let's start with the most simple one. So I'm going to right click on the student for table, and within the options there's an option called edit top 200. So if I click this one, it then present me with a form that I can fill information, and my columns have been stated at the top there, like, okay, so this is the student number, this is where you're storing the name, and this is where you're storing the gender. But just to remind you, you need to have that design in mind. What is it that must be stored? So I'm going to click on design so that we see what is allowed and what is not allowed. You can see that my table expects me not to have any nulls, meaning that I can't have a space which is null here. At the end of each row, I must look through the row and verify that I've got every data which is required. So the student number, the name, and the gender are all required based on this information which is on the student design table. So I'm going to start here, and I will give it a random student number. I'll say 2019-01, and then go to the next column. The name, I'm going to give it my name, and then the gender, I'm just going to say male. Now you could be worried that you are already having some sort of errors here, but then these are not errors. It's just waiting for you to commit, so that once you've committed, it's going to check, does this correspond with this here? And then the correspondent here does not mean that you've only entered. It also means that you've entered the correct information, the correct data type which is expected on the database, on the table. So for example, student number is expected to become an integer. The name is expected to be a string, which is a variable character with a maximum length of 50 characters. The gender is expected to be another string with a maximum length of 10 characters. So what happens is, when you're done with this, you can either click the next row, it will then show you that it has saved the information, and this is now saving instantly. So there's no need for you to come and press save. Whatever is happening here, if you're typing something, once you move to the next row, this thing is saved automatically. There's no need to save. So I'm going to try a few more students as well. I'm going to say 2019-02. This time around, I'm going to put Tinashe, and then I will say male again. You can press tab, and it will continue to save this information. Now let's try to be tricky here. Let's try to say, we want to see what will happen if we go against these rules that we have stipulated here. If it's expecting an integer, let's give it something else which is not an integer. If it was expecting a size of 10, let's give it something which is not a size of 10. So I'm going to come here and say, instead of an integer, I will actually give it a name. I will then say Shana, and then go to the next step. Already it's not going to allow me to proceed, because it can see that the value that I've entered here does not correspond with the design that I've made on the other side. So the design is expecting an integer. So I need to remove this, make it an integer. So 2019-03. Go to the next column. This then allows me to move on. So here, let's say Shana, and then here let's change and give it maybe a very big maximum size and say this is male, and I'm just going to try and make it so big that it's above 10 characters. So if I try to move on to the next one, it's not going to allow, because it now realizes that this goes against the rules that I've put on the other side, that the data type for gender should be a variable character but with a maximum length of characters of 10. So I'm just gonna remove this and move on to the next row, and now it works. So this is the first part of how we insert or we create data inside our table. Let's look into the second part, which is to use a query. So I'm going to click here where it says new query. And a nice page like this will be opened for me. I always advise people at this stage to always remember what is their database name. And in most cases, their database name will be displayed here. This is my database name. Why is this important? Is because you might be working with so many databases which are here. And then for you to just start by writing a query without targeting which database are you working on, you might find some difficulty. Let's just be cautious about that. So I'm going to start by saying I will use, which database? I will use a database called Tendo underscore testing, and then it will pop up here. Testing, that is the name of the database I'm working on. So now my SQL, when it's running this code, it already knows where to focus within all of these databases. Where is it that it must focus? Then I will start writing my query. It will go something like this: insert into, then I must give it the name of the table. So the name of my table I'm working on here is called student info. So I'm going to write that student info. There it pops up for me. Student info, this is the name of this table. Insert into student info. I usually like to cut it for now so that you see each statement. So the first one is use, the second one is insert into, name of the table. And then now you need to be specifying what are the columns which are found inside student info. So the first column we are aware of is student number, comma. The second column that we are aware of is the name, comma. Then the third one that we have there is gender. Right. And then you can see that name has been highlighted as blue here. This means that this name is a reserved word for SQL. You are not allowed to use it. You might use it, it will work, but then I will advise that do not use a name, a variable or a column name that when you put it here, it changes color, it becomes blue. Because this then tells you that this name has already been reserved by SQL. So you could imagine if you wanted to use the same name for something else, it might be a problem. So, but for now, let's leave it, and then we'll focus on it. We'll change it later. So that is the column names we're talking about, and then the values. I usually like putting it down here so that you can see that they are matching with that. So the first which is expected is a number. I can just put it any number I want. 2019-04, comma. The name, it's a string, meaning it must be inside quotation, and SQL only allows single quotation. Do not do these double quotations, right? They will not be recognized. It allows only single quotations. So I will put a name, let's say given, comma, and then gender is also a string, so I must put it inside single quotation. I will say female. Once I have this kind of code, let me just refresh it for you. It's use, the name of the database, insert into the name of the table. The column names must be stipulated. This is so important because you need to tell it that the first value to find here is going into student number. The second value is going into the name. The last value is going into the gender. But you can even see by the way they are aligned. Hence, when I come here, I usually put the brackets underneath so that you can see they are matching. So the last part which is left here is for you to press execute. So once you press execute, you should get a message which says one row has been affected. If you are not getting this message, then something might be wrong. Some of you, when you press execute, it might request that you must connect again. Please just click connect to the back to the database, and then it will run for you, and then you'll get this nice message which says one row has been affected. So how do we then see that these values have been inserted inside our table? We then introduce a new statement which is called the select statement. Now the select statement is usually just for display to show us the results within our table. It's a very common statement. It might become your favorite very soon. So there's already a built-in statement that you can just go and run, which are select, but I prefer writing our own statement. Later on, we won't have to write, we'll just go click the ones which are already built in. So this one is run already. Let's click another one here, create a new query to see the results of what we have just done. So we're going to click new query. Once we click new query, we're going to repeat the same thing, which is use the name of the database, which is Tendo_testing. And then from there, I'm going to write this statement called select, and I'm going to say all from the name of my table, which is student info. This one. That is all you need to write for now. So this one is going to select all data from a table called student info coming from a database called Tendo testing. So if you press execute here, you will then see that the results are now showing within my tables. Here is the results for given that we just added here. That given is this. So you can continue to run around and play around. How then do you, which one is more familiar to you? Is this first one much easier for you, or is this second one much easier for you? Both of them achieve the same goal, but then you will realize that even when you write test, we will be asking you questions about this one, not the one where it looks much more easier. So you need to familiarize yourself with this kind of statement. Right. The lesson for insert will stop here. The next lesson will be speaking of how then do you go and update your information.